Well, hello again. This is Susanna Kass. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are in the world today. I am your webinar organizer today because one of our colleagues actually didn't feel too well. So I'll try to do a good job on moderating today's session. I hope everyone is healthy during the challenging times when you are we are unable to get together in person. And our world has definitely gone virtual for quite some time now. So stay patient. I think hopefully all of us will be able to get together in person sometime this year. So thank you for everyone, our speakers, our audience who are taking the time at a very important day for the America today to join this morning's webinar. All of our webinar sessions will be recorded and available on demand. If you want to come back to watch it again, or you want to tell a colleague about the session after your attendance today, please feel free to send in an email to infoprime.com, and you should be able to get access to all the slides that we shared today, and in addition to the recording. As a participant, you will be muted, but you can type in your questions to our speakers in a Q&A box anytime. And you don't need to wait till the end. All the speakers and our VIP guest, Mark, will try to answer the Q&A with you in the checkbox. But in the event, if we run out of time, we didn't get a chance to verbally or textually answer your questions, we will make sure that we will respond to you as a follow-up. So without further ado, I think I'm just going to go ahead and kick off the webinar. My name is Susanna Kass. I am the host today. I am a computer scientist. I'm very passionate about climate change. I've done a lot of sustainability work in the data center and the ICT sector and with the UN. Some of my work was recognized, so I'm also a member of the Climate 50. So I share the membership of this list with other global leaders who are very, very passionate, have done a really great job in many areas continually in terms of influencing climate change. Very exciting today, calling in live from Silicon Valley, because we will have a new president for our country momentarily, and he already admitted that he will be rejoining the Paris Agreement. So it's a very positive and uplifting day for many of us who's been in this for a long time. Very exciting today. I actually have a VIP guest, Mark Monroe from Microsoft. He's actually a friend of mine. We've been in this industry for over 25 or 30 years, Mark. I stopped counting.
I was going to say 100, but I guess I was counting internet years.
You are totally correct, Mark. Mark and I recently did a joint podcast with two esteemed colleagues of ours. They call Uptime Punks, Paul and Tim, who hopefully might be on the call today. And if some of you actually have listened to the podcast or are interested in the link of the podcast, feel free to reach out to me through LinkedIn or through InfoPrime website. And we are glad to share with you a very inspiring podcast that Mark did along with Paul and Tim. Personally, for me, I have been in the data center world for a while, managing over 200 megawatts of data center across 17 countries. And more specifically, I've done over 2 gigawatt of renewable energy agreement. And many of them, actually all of them, are still up and coming and running, because when we put a data center in place, like Mark and I did, it's just encouraging to see how they actually grow. Concurrently, I also work in the energy sector, which give me the privilege to serve many of wonderful clients, such as Goldman Sachs, Johns Hopkins University, which, by the way, produced a COVID interactive map, if you actually track that. Very sadly, some of the numbers are going the wrong direction for the US. Hopefully, we will bend the curve soon. Including clients like Microsoft, Google, Equinix, Facebook, Walmart, and YouTube. So what I like to say is the following. 2020 has been an unprecedented year for all of us and have definitely cost lives. I lost a few of my friends and also one of the president at Stanford University in 2020. and it has caused a disruption to all of us. I am particularly grateful for all the frontline workers in our community to keep our society running, but also want to do a shout out for data center professionals such as Mark and everybody in his organization have worked hard 24/7 around the globe to keep our online platform running without any interruption. So according to Microsoft and one of Mark's colleagues, Noelle Walsh, she shared with me in one of our calls recently that daily, there are over 70 million of Teams minutes being used. And we all know that we have been using the word Zoom, which is actually what we use today as a verb now. So our life has changed, and which is another reason why Paul and Tim did a kickoff on a podcast. So Mark, maybe I'll turn it over to you, and you can say a few words about the summary of the podcast that you did. And then you and I can then have a dialogue about some of the recent work that you have done, including winning some award. So perhaps would you mind sharing the summary of the podcast with the audience? And then again, like I said, anybody interested in the link, please feel free to send me a note and I will make sure that you got the link for it.
Yeah, thanks, Susanna. So it was a great discussion. Wide-ranging on a variety of sustainability topics. We focused in on the ability, I think, of hyperscale companies to contribute to sustainability of the digital infrastructure industry, and talked about different ways of addressing sustainability for the data center industry. I think it's it's really a critical feature to get the information out. We work in a conservative industry, a very conservative industry that I'll often tell folks that are either unfamiliar with our industry or that are new to the industry that reliability and availability is number one, and everything else is second in most people's minds. And what we talked about on the podcast was being able to think in more than one dimension at a time, we think is important. So being able to consider the economic value of a decision as well as the ecological value. And because most of us work for-profit organizations, we have to keep that economic dimension in mind. We've got to make things that are viable from a corporate standpoint, that support our shareholders, that support folks that pay money for our services. But we shouldn't only think in that one dimension. We got to make sure that we think, let's optimize it financially and ecologically if we can. And I think that was probably one of the key messages from the podcast. So I'd encourage you to all to go listen and see what you think.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Paul. You are actually unmuted, so if you like
I'm
to
here.
say a few
I'm
words.
listening to Lady Gaga singing the national anthem. So I'm trying to focus on two things at the same time.
There you go.
We know
Paul,
which one has more of your attention.
No,
there
of
you
course,
go.
Susanna has the most. Susanna and you, of course, get the most attention from my end. I think it's a. How would you say? It's a historical moment in history.
Indeed, indeed.
And that's
Paul,
the same thing what we're trying to do with the Uptime punks.
Yes.
Be part of history. This is how we created it, actually. But
Great.
yeah.
So Paul, for those of a few audience may not be familiar with Uptime punks, do you mind saying a few words about your vision?
Yeah, of course. And thanks for having us here to give us the platform to a little bit spread our wings a little bit further into the universe of the data center industry and the tech world itself. Myself and Tim, we come from a background where we run technology events, and we just felt that especially during the pandemic, that there was somehow the data centers became sort of the lungs and the heartbeat of society, because they kept everything up and running and operating throughout the world. So we felt like we wanted to give that platform a voice and a reach, and to share their stories. And that turned then into us discovering as well through Susanna and a couple of other people, but especially Susanna, that there's a lot of things with sustainability and trying to do something good for the planet that needs to be done on the data center side, and there's still a lot of work. There's a lot of pioneers out there that really try to make a difference, such as Susanna and Mark, you as well. This is why it was a great honor for us to have you on the podcast to hear what Microsoft is trying to do. And these are really the things that inspire us to try to spread the word even further, to make sure that people realize that data centers are out there. Data centers have kept the countries and the entire world running, and also they're trying to, they realize, yes, the mistakes were done in the past, but now moving forward, we want to be better and even support communities. So yeah, this is how the Uptime Punks were created, basically to give a platform for everybody to reach the world and sit in everybody's ear. Yeah.
Thank you, Paul, for that. Thank you, Paul, for dialing in from Europe. So please stay with us, okay? Speaking about inspiration, I have to admit that I am definitely very personally inspired by you, Mark, over my entire career. You have done amazing things for the industry, leading many successful projects. I think most and every one of them that you have done, we all have learned great lessons. Even though we didn't really kind of focus on sustainability, I have to say, when we first started our journey in data center, but I think over the years you catch up really fast, leading, being the visionary person, starting the Green Grid, serving on the board of director, and at the same time, you know, being the Center for Resource Conservation in Boulder, Colorado, which I'm envy because it's one of a place I love to live and retired. And indeed, you know, you leverage definitely your degree that you earned from mechanical engineering from Virginia Tech very, very well to continue to kind of teach us. So perhaps you can share with us an ambition that your executive did probably, I would say, about a year ago. I can't believe it actually has been so fast and it's so long, you know, that your executive make the announcement, very ambitious announcement by Microsoft. So can you say a few words about what does that mean to you, your organization, and the benefits that you have to the stakeholders on the planet?
Yeah. Thanks, Susanna, for recognizing that. It did start just about a year ago, January of 2020. It seems like so long ago. We could get together face to face when this came out. We talked about it at conferences, and the goal that was stated, which I think is great, is we don't want to just be carbon neutral. We're going to actually become carbon negative by 2030. And by 2050, the commitment is to remove all the carbon that Microsoft has been responsible for from a scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 standpoint. And you know, I think the differentiation in the commitment that was made a year ago to be carbon negative rather than just carbon neutral, and to really focus on scope 3 emissions as well, which are, you know, the indirect emissions that we cause through ordering things and what the logistics companies burn up and things like that. So we're trying to really spread our influence and our tools to be able to monitor those things, to track them, to chase them down to zero, and to commit to remove, you know, to becoming a carbon negative enough that we can remove that carbon footprint that's trailing behind us by 2050. So throughout the rest of 2020, the executives at Microsoft talked about additional commitments in terms of reducing and replenishing the water that we use in our data centers and our whole company, the waste stream that comes out of Microsoft, being committed to getting to zero waste, and to really building a planetary computer that can be used by all people to help monitor, track, reduce, analyze, optimize all the things that go along. So there are kind of 4 leaves to our green clover, carbon negative being one of the most important ones: zero water, zero waste, and the ecosystems commitment. So we're really pleased. I mean, like you said, I expected us to go carbon neutral. A lot of folks are committing to carbon neutral, but to go carbon negative, I think, is very important at this point. So we're very pleased. Now, what that means from an implementation standpoint, from where we sit in the cloud operations group at Microsoft, is that we've got to come up with offsets of renewable energy that take over the amount of energy that we use in our data centers, which, we joke about. Everybody needs their cat videos and their email, and more people in the world. We want to make sure that we get across the digital divide and enable more people to do it. That means more use of the internet, more use of data centers, more use of data and the electricity that goes with that. And so we're going to continue. We and the other hyperscale companies that are committed to these things are going to continue to inspire additional renewable resources being brought online, and taking the footprint of our data centers from an energy standpoint to fully renewable. So that's one of the things that you'll see. Plus the work that we're doing in non-polluting solutions, like where we've made a commitment to have zero diesel in terms of backup systems at our data centers by 2030. Backup systems only emit a very, very small amount of carbon because we don't use them very often. But the thing I don't think you want to lose track of is how a non-polluting backup generator system could be used in applications that help enable additional renewable resources. For example, firming up the delivery of intermittent generation sources like solar and wind by providing storage or generation capability when it's needed, when those systems are either overproducing or underproducing to help stabilize the grid. Data centers can be a tremendous producer and consumer at the same time, and I think that's one of the ways that you'll see the digital industry contribute to the overall sustainability of the planet over the next decade or so.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much for giving such a wonderful explanation and actively working in the mission that you all are driving. So I have to say to the audience that this is great news for the world to hear directly from Mark, and also an important day that actually our new president, our lady vice president, also agree with Mark and the leadership at Microsoft that they're going to rejoin the Paris Agreement to tackle the climate change. So I'm personally very excited to be attending the Clean Energy inaugural ball later on in a couple hours. And hopefully I'll learn a few things about the specifics about how US is going to pick up the speed and catch up on I would say, unfortunately, a few lost time in the last couple of years. So, but the industry has also spoken. If you take a look at the slide that I share with you, my work actually at the UN SDG have given us a privilege to work with the leadership circle of also the additional company. And many of them, by the way, Mark, are your customers using your cloud. And they also have made the commitment similar to you on renewable energy because they are inspired by your mission and the digital transformation journey that Microsoft is taking us. So with that, Mark, congratulations on one of your Energy Award winner for 2020 from Data Center Dynamics DCD. It's a very prestigious organization. It's a very tough competition. And perhaps you can actually share with the audience, what did you win?
Yeah, thank you. Well, we won getting our picture on the net. They have a great picture of me with my mouth open in a tux, which is probably my natural position, talking too much. We got a beautiful little statue, and but more importantly, I think the recognition of the project I think is what's special, and the idea that the industry is interested and focused on something like new hydrogen generators. We won the award for the work that we did in 2020, where we've tested out a 250 kilowatt hydrogen powered fuel cell system that could act as a diesel generator replacement. And we in fact ran this through the same tests that we do with our diesel generators. We ran duration tests to verify that the system could support IT loads as long as the diesel generators do. And it was 10 times bigger than any other test that we had seen supporting compute resources in a generator function. And as a result of that, we're now springboarding another 10x to get up to production levels where we plan on running a 3 megawatt generator test, hydrogen powered, again, zero pollution, an alternative to diesel in some locations where hydrogen might be available, and really a pushing forward of the industry, both the hydrogen industry and the data center industry, into looking for alternatives, that can be non-polluting and participatory in the electric grid. So we were really pleased, and I know you were a judge on that panel as well, right? So I should be the payment should be in the mail pretty soon. That we agree. Oh no, I didn't mean that.
I know.
No influence.
It was actually a very challenging category, but I have to admit that, Mark, it was a simple decision for all the judges, and it is absolutely a privilege to be the judge on the category. But it was a simple decision because your vision really stands out, and you guys did a great job in knowing me. I follow science, I like data, so the proposal and the submission was very well written. In terms of the metrics, although I have to say very well written in that regard, you have a lot of metrics, but I did find one typo, but I didn't hold you guys responsible for that. So you still win anyway. Yeah. So you're near perfect. You're near perfect.
It was the British spelling. It was the British spelling.
Exactly. I agree with that. We Americans still have a lot to learn from people like Paul. And David, who is actually one of the speakers joining us from UK. So he will speak in just a minute. So Mark, thank you. Thank you very much for sharing your vision. This is very, very helpful. I attempted to map for the audience sustainability throughout the data center life cycle, which Mark and I can do it in his sleep. I still need to keep my eyes closed and pay attention. Oftentimes, I felt that the global goal, the UN SDG goal, has many relevance in terms of the data center industry, even though the global goal, when it was designed by the UN back in, I would say 15 years ago, it was not focused on the data center, but I found that very relevant. Specifically to the point that what Mark was talking about, using renewable energy, be able to actually use innovations such as hydrogen now to start taking a look at the infrastructure. My colleague, Alberto, will talk a little bit more about the circular economy later on. And specifically from a resource usage, David will really hit on the highlights. I don't know whether the audience know, but when you build a data center in US alone, we have consumed over 600 billion liters of water. Well, part of it is 2020 was not a normal year for all of us because it has a big growth for data center due to COVID-19. But this is massive amount of water that we are taking away from the community, and we need to stop doing the status quo. And I'm actually ashamed of that, that I certainly use a lot of water when I was building eBay across 17 countries. And I certainly did my fair share of mistakes that I made in terms of emission and water consumption. Mark probably did a better job than me because he lead the green grid, and so he was ahead of me. But I have to admit that his point was valid, that we need to be a little bit more mindful, or actually more mindful now when we actually do the site selection on where we actually place the data center. So I have a bias towards that. When the natural resources available, please look at that. If not, then you definitely should take a look at some of the on-site generation. And one of our speaker, Lou, will talk a lot more about that in Virginia Beach, which is all famous about the whole dirty cloud in Ashburn. So he'll talk about that. And then I have to admit that if you sum up in one word of what data center is, it's really resilient. I don't know Mark, what you think, but at the end of the day, if we have the order of priority, we must keep our data center up 24/7, 365.
Yep. So what I said,
and everything else.
Yeah, when they can't get their cat videos,
Right.
so.
yes, then they start screaming, and economic, environment, social, and oftentimes the overall, back end, we look at that as a secondary compared to our job. And I've been in the operation data center for 20 years plus now, many operating hours. We still need to keep the resilient. However, I do want everybody to stop that thought and have a rethink, because you do not need to choose between resilient and simultaneous uptime and sustainability. And we will talk to you today about how we were able to achieve that and at the same time scale. So I think it's extremely important now that all of us need to rethink. Today is a new day for many of us. And clearly, I think we can map the data center life cycle with sustainability, achieving it simultaneously, and also incorporating the circular economy in our mind. This is a slide that I would say Mark and I love, because we follow data and we follow science. So just like a network operating center that we measured and we metered every single thing that's going on in the data center to ensure our uptime, I have been actively now working on keeping track of emission, so we can enable the carbon negative goal to be met, and from a report perspective. And sorry, I didn't have the screenshot for service. I will do so for you, Mark, next time. And but it would be available through any other devices in terms of the metric. And I think that is really important when we start thinking about hyperscale net zero data center. And then I would have to say, last but not least, one of the more important thing that we've done, or I have done with a client, is we started off this company, also a hyperscale client, moving to the cloud, started with basically 100% dirty. And you can see with the chart that even though the energy consumption continues to grow, and we try to, by the way, level it off with some technology, but we look at it from a systems perspective. In a very short period of time, I'll be able to actually help this client to be able to reduce the decarbonization. So this activity is going on, and we hope that you will be part of the journey. So with that said, what I'd like to do, if I can figure out how to move my slide effectively, I'd like to introduce our first speaker of the day, Lou Shadle from Virginia Beach DigiPorts. So Lou, thank you for joining us from Virginia Beach today. Lou has a very impressive background that he has 45 years in information and communication technology. He has done quite a bit of work in a national, international scope, also served as a strategic advisor to the U.S. Department of Defense, Agency for International Development, the World Bank, and he and I know similar people in United Nations, except that he worked on a different part of the world relating to improve the social, economic, and infrastructure. And Lou's vision is very direct now and very focused in Virginia Beach DigiPort to effectively leverage the impressive acreage that he actually has at Virginia Beach to make it to be a net zero. So with that, Lou, I'll let you take the conversation away.
Thank you so very much, Susanna. Thank you so very much. It's great to be here this morning, Susanna. Wonderful to be here with you. And also, it's great to be here with such a distinguished panel of guests. Very, very impressive backgrounds, experience, and great opportunities ahead of all of us. I'm also very pleased to be in this partnership, that is Virginia Beach DigiPorts and InfoPrime, to take a look at some joint objectives in Virginia Beach, but to not just look at it on a project-by-project basis, but to take a more holistic approach to the development of a potentially very large site. And I'll get into that in a minute. But I want us to also look collectively at, the sustainability costs, not just the project costs, but the sustainability costs of these large projects. And then even more important today, what are the long-term costs to the environment? You know, if we are to take a look at long-term life cycle impacts of projects such as data centers, and if we look at the legacy of the historical approach that has been taken, we can't do that again. We have to be much more thoughtful stewards of our environment in the future, because we can't build the way we used to build. We have to take a completely new approach, one that is either a carbon neutral, or as Mark had said, carbon negative. And that really should be the collective industry-wide and multi-industry-wide approach to large-scale developments, to see how we can get to a negative carbon footprint. So in this partnership, Virginia Beach DigiPorts part is to bring 4 elements. The first is land, and then energy, connectivity, and then buy-in. And when I say buy-in, I'm talking about community, state level, political buy-in, and then also legal and statutory buy-ins that help to promote the project and provide incentives for development. And I'll touch upon each one of those. So to start with, I currently control approximately 200 acres of land in Virginia Beach that I have development options on over a period of time, but I can expand that to approximately 600 acres. And this, I have to tell you, is about the last developable land in the city of Virginia Beach that exists. But working over the last 3 years to aggregate the land together, and working with landowners and working with the local communities, I've been able to put this together so that we have an opportunity for developing 400 plus megawatt of infrastructure. And technically, based upon new densities, this could be 600 megawatts or 700 megawatts with the appropriate land in place. And what's nice about having aggregated land in this fashion, I can pre-stage expansion. You know, a hyperscaler may come in with a 40 megawatt requirement on day one, but has envisioned over a 10 or 12 or 15 year period of time expansion to 100, 150 or beyond. And I can pre-stage that so that we're not looking at disassociated connections on their data centers that can actually expand in a unified fashion. So what we are bringing to InfoPrime as far as our partnership is the site infrastructure itself that is scalable, and on-site energy development, or on-site energy capabilities that will help to develop a triple net total cost of ownership environment. So I also have access immediately in Virginia Beach to rather large-scale renewable energy resources. Most recently in 2019, Dominion Energy started a project offshore, 26 miles offshore of Virginia Beach. They leased 113,000 square acres of seabed and have already started to deploy the first 2 10 megawatt wind generators out there, with expansion plans to go well beyond that to multi-gigawatt capacities. Now, clearly, everyone recognizes that the wind doesn't blow all the time and you need to have storage. And that's another area that Dominion is working on to centralize storage, so that when the wind isn't blowing, there is still power that is renewable power that is available for use. And on top of that, I also have access to something that's rather unique to the region down there: high volumes of not only natural gas, but local biogas supplies. Again, Dominion Energy partnered with Smithfield Foods, the largest pig farm producer in the United States, to work with local farms, pig farms, and very large 10,000 pig farms. And this doesn't sound sexy, but it's real, that produce a tremendous amount of biogas that would normally escape into the environment. They are trapping these gases, locally compressing them, and bringing those biogases into the grid. In fact, they're committed to developing approximately 2.5 million metric tons of biogas per year. Now, our current work with InfoPrime, we're looking at about 100 megawatt current project, which would be using, and Alberto will address this, but would be using these natural gas fuel cell developing devices for our production of energy. So I will have both the natural gas as well as biogas available for this, as well as renewable energy from wind farms offshore. And my intent in the park is to take a centralized energy approach. In other words, I don't want to build renewable gas or carbon-free energy solutions on a project-by-project basis. I want to take and look at this as on a campus or park level scale to centralize all this and to provide it for a park level deployment over time. And that way, through economies of scale, I can manage lower cost over time for the energy production and distribution to the park. So again, the long-term goal here is to get to a position where we are like Mark in a carbon negative situation in Virginia Beach. What an impressive position to be in if you can get there. And again, if we are thoughtful stewards of our environment, we will in fact get there. So another aspect that Virginia Beach DigiPorts is bringing to the project is connectivity. Beginning in 2018, Virginia Beach landed its first subsea cable from continental Europe. This was the first subsea cable to land in the mid-Atlantic region of the United States ever. And it was a significant development because it was a cable system that was completely separated from the 18 other cables across the Atlantic, which were aggregated in the New York, New Jersey area, as well as the South Florida area. All of those cables were aging and were low capacity relative to new technology, and were also routed through the central Atlantic through an area that is rather congested, and a seismic event or other anomaly could potentially render those cables inoperable. So the newest cable, the cable called Monroe, is a high capacity cable who has 8 times more capacity than the other 18 cables combined. So the point being is we've got a tremendous amount of aggregated capacity now in the mid-Atlantic. 4 cables are either planned or operational, with 4 additionals that are looking out at on the forecast. I have direct connectivity between continental United States and the continental Europe, as well as to South America, directly to South America. And in the near term, with a new cable called the SAEX cable, we'll have the first connectivity between continental United States and the continent of Africa via South Africa. And just added to that, the second phase of that cable goes from South Africa then to Malaysia. So there will be a new express route going directly from Virginia Beach to Malaysia.
Lou, that is an impressive investment. I think you have an illustration to show the connectivity map, correct?
Indeed, I do, and I forgot to switch it. And thank you, Susanna. Thank you very much. Very good point. So as the graphic shows there is a number of cable connections that are going out to Europe, Africa, South Africa, and then on to Malaysia. And very important also is another cable that is going to connect directly between Virginia Beach and the New York region, which is very important because of a large aggregation of data center infrastructure servicing the financial markets in New York. We'll have another route from Virginia Beach to reach those if you come in from continental Europe. So a lot of these are very low latency connections and express routes, and all using the latest in optical technologies across the oceans. And then finally, one of the very important points about Virginia Beach is the work that we have done in establishing a relationship with the various stakeholders, with the governor himself, with the mayor of Virginia Beach, with the community leaders. All of this is important when you're developing large scale projects, that you have this buy-in so you don't have this continual resistance to expansion. We were able to successfully take the entirety of the land under consideration and have the city council vote to assign that land, currently agricultural, to a technology zone, which allows for faster permitting and immediate approval of expansion on the projects. And something else that we were able to do was to influence the city to reduce its actual tax rate on personal property for data center use. In other words, the equipment that is put into a data center, the taxation went from $4 per $100 of value all the way down to 4 cents per $100 of value. And then with a very aggressive depreciation schedule, it makes Virginia Beach the single most incentivized for data center operations municipalities in the entire Commonwealth of Virginia. There's nobody that can compete with that on a wholesale policy and taxation basis. So our collective objective in Virginia Beach on a regional basis and on a state basis or Commonwealth basis is to create an economic ecosystem that is embracing a carbon-free energy future, one that is sustainable and one that has the absolute minimum, if not positive, environmental or ecological impact that we can possibly do. This is the objective. This is what we're all working towards, both the project leaders as well as the political leaders and all of my people. This is our objective.
Thank you, Lou. Thank you, Lou.
And
That's
with
very
that, I will
impressive.
turn over. Yes, thank you, Susanna. Thank you for the opportunity.
Great. Well, stick around. There might be more questions coming up to you. So I'll go quickly
Indeed.
to my next speaker. Quickly to my next speaker. So David, perhaps you can get your slide ready. David is an amazing individual, and thank you very much for joining us today. His career, it's just very impressive, but I'll keep it short today. You can probably read more about it when you go to his company website, Iceotope. I have to admit that David really have done a lot of great work when he was at Unisys and IBM, understand the commercial integration extremely well, working on very big deal in terms of billion pounds, I have to say, in terms of the acquisitions. Goodness that in year 2008, he decided to, in addition to focus on investment for life sciences, which is actually one of Susanna's favorite, he did some wonderful charitable work with his family that educate children in Kenya. And today, the organization that David has founded and started and working with his family has benefited and educated the kids, more than 20,000 children, around 840 in education and others supported in orphanage. So thank you so much, David, for what you do in terms of
Hello?
In education, because I fundamentally believe subsequently he became the CEO since 2016. And I have the privilege to meeting with David in the industry, and I am very impressed with his vision and what he has done with the team in terms of innovation. I personally found that a game changer for the work that he has done in Hyperscale, which is just the beginning, in terms of quantifiable resource usage of water can be significantly reduced through this technology called immersion cool. So without further ado, and I know you have prepared some excellent metrics and system for the audience today. David, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Susanna. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
That's great. And thank you also to Mark and Lou. I think genuinely really interesting presentations. And kind of where I want to start is really to pick up on actually some of the things that Mark started with, where we talk both about the leadership that's coming and also that need for the economic and the ecological decision. And kind of where I want to start is to just recognize that when we look at our industry just now, we talk about this thing called hyperscale and how it fits with net zero. And I guess what we're seeing is ever expanding growth, and it's easy for hyperscalers to become a target. But I think it's massively, massively important to recognize that they have been a net benefit to us. By managing to scale together all of these enterprise data centers that moved out into the cloud, we gained hugely in efficiency and actually the ability to really track and know what we were doing. So, what worked there also allowed us to deliver a whole set of really exciting new business models, new applications, new developments. So it's super important to recognize that actually part of the platform we have for the leadership that's coming is the very fact that we've had these huge aggregations of these, massive steps forward. So notwithstanding, there will have been learning along the way. it's actually the platform that allows us both to work in the cloud and as we move out into the edge to build technologies that can work across those. But things are changing. And the things that are changing is we need to continue to grow, and we therefore have to do so using things like carbon negativity, zero water type approaches, because otherwise we really will cause trouble. There's also a new technology coming, which is much hotter. It's much less scalable, and it also needs to live in whole new locations. So we need to protect it, cool it, and manage it differently. And we're running out of ability to just keep using the same technologies we always did. The awareness point is super important. I think all of us have come on a journey over the years to better understand the impact we have on the climate, our environment, and to really better understand that sustainability is not just some kind of tree-hugging process. Sustainability is something we all absolutely have to take seriously. So we're all more aware, but we really need to make sure that we recognize also that our end users and those who want to get their pictures of their kittens out are going to be more aware too, and they will demand that kind of leadership from us. And with that awareness comes legislation. Legislators will absolutely start to make things change. So there's going to be change. We have to do more of this. And some of the technologies that help us do that, you know, I think Lou really highlighted some amazing kind of investments using, you know, fuel cells, offshore gas, etc. You know, fabulous stuff that's happening there. But then at the level of the data center, when we talk about things like cooling, which consumes huge amounts of energy and water, and Susanna, you really did, you know, pick up on that important point about water. So I want to use here, these are real data. We worked with a hugely respected engineering consultancy who worked with some of the biggest hyperscalers in the world designing data centers. And we've looked at cooling the entire stacks. This is spinning disks, it's servers, GPUs, and it can be from hyperscale to the edge. So we've got a platform of technologies and solutions together that really solve that whole problem. And we've looked at them in a whole set of different locations. And we've compared what you can do against standard, well understood technologies. And this is just to really focus in on some of those very obvious benefits and the scale of them. The water reduction that's possible, as you can see, starts to be anywhere between 86 and 96%, massively focused on these, you know, hugely consuming areas, but it's really super possible to see the kind of water reduction we can make. When you talk about those billions and billions of gallons of water, we're consuming enough water globally to hydrate 10% of the world's population, and we can massively reduce that consumption, and hence, you know, be zero water and also super responsible. But importantly also, and this is without crazy density stuff and reinvent this can be working in retrofit and in new build. It's absolutely possible right now to reduce the net energy consumption, including servers, by 11% in these kind of more temperate environments and up to 40% as you go to environments like Singapore and beyond. So these are hugely compelling figures, and that's before we've really gone into the wholeness of the kind of circular economy. And that's where the conversations we have, Susanna, really starts to make a huge difference. And I think Alberto will add to that. So, you know, I'm stealing your slide from earlier here, Susanna, because I think it's super important that we do recognize it's more than just energy and water. The built environment, you know, the hundreds of acres that we take up, the land we consume, the concrete, the metals, the materials, and even the servers and all the stuff that's in them. It's possible now, and we know it is, to reduce the physical space that we take up just by changing the cooling types and not going for crazy densities to reduce 50% of our space. That means we can use less material, or we can get more compute per square foot. We can have that huge reduction in water consumption, energy consumption. And I think really importantly, building out from there is that space kind of thing. It doesn't just save on those things, but it massively enhances site selection. We can build in more places. We can satisfy more municipalities. I thought the work that Lou did in Virginia Beach was fabulous, working with the community. Imagine if we can just be more able to take brownfield and not frighten people that we're going to be taking away their water supplies locally. We can also massively reduce the operating cost. These TCO benefits are huge, but the actual operation, the running of the data center, back to that risk point, it's possible to reduce our maintenance implementations, our maintenance interactions, and it's possible to do that at any scale. So we can reduce risk, we can reduce CapEx and OpEx, we can massively improve our sustainable performance. We can do it now, today. We've got the technologies that do that today. And importantly, with things like heat reuse, we can capture that heat and we can build that into our local environment, and we can, sell it back to grid, heat homes, work in smart cities, and allow our IT to thrive and develop. So our vision for the future is very much one where we build on that sustainability, where we build out great solutions with partners like all of those who are here on this call, and where we adapt into that fabulous leadership that's being shown to be able to, not just solve the immediate problems of today, but build a platform around which we can design whole new ways of working for the future. This will allow us to design new types of servers that are more efficient in themselves, new data centers that take up less resource, and really deliver that kind of growth that we need without killing the planet. And I'm so excited to be part of it today. So thank you for the opportunity to be part of this conversation.
Well, David, we thank you as well for dialing in from UK. And you're doing okay, recovering from COVID?
Yes, I have. Thank you. Yes, I got to have a deep and meaningful relationship with it in October last year, and fortunately 100% recovered, and super grateful. Thank you. Just glad definitely to have it past me.
That's great. That's great. Well, what you talked about absolutely is most welcome. Like I shared with you, the audience earlier in the leadership circle slide, many of the different companies are indeed very, very mindful, specifically relating to the water consumption. And it is I look forward to this year. I think we have already a few projects already talking about that we can do more work with it and be able to actually quantify it. Feel free, by the way, to take any of the work that I do. I have no pride of ownership. If anybody can actually even improve on it, and I definitely think you have already, be my guest. I think that would be that would be very welcome, and look forward to actually bringing many of your technology to reality. And hopefully we got a chance to also work with Lou at Virginia Beach. I think that would be fantastic. So thank you, David.
Thank you.
So with that, I would say, Alberto, given the sake of time, what I'd like to do is maybe direct the audience to, if you guys are all interested in Alberto's impressive background in clean energy, please go to his website, infoprime.com. So Alberto, how about I turn that over to you, because I know you have a lot of great things to share with the audience today in terms of the clean energy design and how we can actually make sustainability and resilient to not be a fighting force, but make it to be simultaneous. So please take that away, and glad to have you here from Switzerland today.
Yeah, thank you, Susanna. Thank you. It's really great. Yes, well, at InfoPrime, we are very excited about the cooperation and the involvement we have with the Virginia Beach Digital Port. It's a perfect location for net zero data center. And sustainability, as you heard, and data center are our passion. I think that was very much clear from the way we talk about that. Our vision is to enable the building of net zero data centers, which are integrated with circular economies. And our ambition at InfoPrime is to deliver integrated and actionable solutions so that our clients can build net zero data centers everywhere as a service, as at scale. Lou and David, they have shown two important elements, which are the appropriate site selection and the adoption of ultra-efficient technologies, such as the liquid immersion cooling, which reduces the water consumption to practically zero. On the energy side, that's where I'm coming from, I would like really to underline how our design enables the simultaneous fulfillment of resilience and sustainability requirements in Virginia Beach and everywhere. So you don't have to choose between one or the other. And even in a location where the grid is relatively dirty and where the status quo would probably lead you to install diesel generators, we can get away with that. InfoPrime affordable portfolio of net zero solution has been in use by Hyperscaler with zero downtime performance. These pictures on the right side show a data center in Seattle at the Advanced Energy Lab of Microsoft. And I'm very, very proud of having been part of the design team for that data center and actually to have delivered the fuel cells for exactly that data center. which is a showcase of a breakthrough design architecture. So for a few years of operation now, there's been 0 outages due to the fuel cells. And as you can see, Washington Governor Inslee is cutting an orange power cable instead of a red ribbon at the inauguration of the data center back in 2017. So that data center is not connected to the power grid. It is connected to the gas grid, and the fuel cell technology used there can operate on natural gas, renewable natural gas, or hydrogen, or a blend between the two. The next step is indeed to make it into a carbon negative data center, and that would require only changing the fuel. Net zero data centers powered by fuel cells and renewable fuels can be deployed at scale now with infraprime modular design with power duality at rack, at pod, and campus level. It's a sustainable and affordable alternative to diesel generators for backup, or it is a resilient and sustainable alternative to the electric grid. It is water positive as the fuel cells produce water. In the European project EcoEdge Prime Power, InfraPrime will lead the creation of an open standard for fuel cells to be used in modular and edge data centers, which will be vendor agnostic and available for every deployment scale. But how can you actually become carbon negative with this design? Being carbon negative is not something that you can achieve just by purchasing zero carbon power or by PPA. As Microsoft showed us, Mike Monroe mentioned at the beginning, there are these 2 fundamental approaches. You can go and support the natural CO2 capturing processes like planting trees or other soil-related carbon sequestration. And the other way, the one that we have to follow, we have to do everything in order to achieve the climate goals. The other way is use technology to capture the carbon and turn it into something useful so that it remains outside the atmosphere. There are numerous technologies being developed, and many of them are in their infancy, and some of them are mature. And one method that is available at scale is to use negative carbon fuels for on-prem CFE generation, carbon-free energy generation, which makes your data center carbon negative. So in addition to using negative carbon fuels, the fuel cell can capture the carbon instead of releasing it into the atmosphere, and the captured CO2 can be stored and used for industrial purposes. So with Susanna, we have analyzed the data center life cycle, the entire data center life cycle, to select where InfraPrime solutions and services can have the greatest impact and provide the most valuable contribution to our customers and partners. Virginia Beach Digital Port will build a negative carbon data center campus in a location where the grid is heavily loaded with carbon. We know that Scope 3 emissions represent the larger part of greenhouse gas emissions, and they're the most difficult to address. That's where the data center will have to reach out to his community or the communities, meaning the immediate local community where the data center is geographically located, and the extended global community of suppliers and customers. So the data center campus will share its power infrastructure with the grid, providing grid services, and at the same time optimizing its consumption to reduce capacity charge expenses. And in addition, we'll plan to merge the clean mobility infrastructure, electric and hydrogen, together with the data center infrastructure. The excess clean power from the data center can be used to charge electric vehicles, and the hydrogen stored for hydrogen mobility can be used as a long-term energy storage or data center backup. To conclude, we can say that the transition to net zero or to negative carbon data center is not anymore a matter of availability of solutions, and it's not even a matter of cost or TCO. It's a matter of choice and execution, and that's where we can help you. And we can start in Virginia Beach. And with this, I give you back to you, Susanna.
Thank you, Alberto. I'd like to have a chance to thank the audience for joining us today. I hope that you have gained a few insights on what we have prepared for you. Also want to have a chance to thank the speakers for your insightful comments. And I know we are all actively working on bringing net zero data center to a reality. So with that, I have to admit that one of the key things that I learned throughout my career is collaboration. Today is a new day for America, actually to a large degree to the world, that we actually going to show ourselves in a more positivity and uplifting spirit. So I like to encourage everyone to join us, all of us. Mark and I absolutely like to hear from you in terms of how you can all help us out in terms of building the net zero journey. I know Lou, David, and Alberto, I know I can speak for them, that they're very, very collaborative and community oriented. So I thank you all for listening today. Enjoy the rest of the day. For some of you watching the inauguration ceremony, we are hosting a net zero data center community. Already got many of the companies in the leadership circle joining. So they continue to actually inspire me. And I think we can all work on a common purpose and have a similar identity to actually work on this journey in the clean energy era. So with that, I officially will close webinar session today. If you are interested in the recording or the slide, just feel free to reach out to me and I will make sure that we will follow up and share that with you. So thank you again, everyone. Have a great day. Stay healthy and be good. Take care. Bye-bye now.